I have Logan, which is the final film in the Wolverine trilogy, and it stars the one and only Hugh Jackman. And the Wolverine trilogy, for those of you who might not be familiar, is also a spinoff of the X-Men series, which, by the way, is 17 years old. So Hugh Jackman has been in this role for 17 years. It's a long time. It can almost vote. The film takes place 50 years after the events of X-Men Days of Future Past. And stay with me for a second. So even if you're like me and you've seen the movies and liked the movies or love the movies, you still might be scratching your head in terms of timelines because they've had this series with this new cast. They've had this series with this old cast. Hugh Jackman is in all of them. He's the constant as Wolverine, so it can get very confusing. The good thing is, even if you're like me or if you're not like me, they set this one far enough in advance that you really just don't need to deal with any of the things that have happened prior. Just know that this film is really character-driven. It's really focusing on the events that are happening to them in the immediate storyline that they're in, which is great. All you need to know is that Logan's getting old and his healing powers are way slowed down. The story is somewhat based on the Old Man Logan comic run, which is a series in the X-Men and Wolverine, actual comics. Professor Xavier is in it, and he's being played by Sir Patrick Stewart in this one. And for real, I love Patrick Stewart in everything. He's such a refined Shakespearean actor, and then he's delivering all these lines about powers and all this stuff, and I'm just you were such a baller.
Yeah, that's me.
And he has the same haircut as Matt, so there's that.
They're balders.
Exactly. So he too is also feeling kind of the woes of old age, especially in regards to both of their powers. The film also stars Stephen Merchant, who you might know from the British version of The Office or all of his work with Ricky Gervais, and it introduces Dafne Keen as X-23, which a bunch of comic nerds might have just gone woo, and the rest of you are just going, what are you talking about, Dana? So she is so good in this. She's an 11. The actress is 11 or 12, and I see her being the next 11 from Stranger Things. She's so badass in this. The film is directed by James Mangold, who directed the last Wolverine film, which I did not like, actually, but I think the difference is he wrote this one, and he absolutely redeemed himself in my book. He directed 3:10 to Yuma, the remake a while back, and Walk the Line, the Johnny Cash biopic. So there's a lot of Western influences in this, and actually the music is very Johnny Cash inspired, which was really interesting because, X-Men films are usually these sort of futuristic, kind of in-your-face comic-y thrillers, and then this one was basically a Western movie. The film is rated R, and it's the first of these films aside from Deadpool, which is kind of its own thing in terms of this universe.
I love Deadpool.
Deadpool is fantastic, and actually it's the same studio, so they rated this one R, and I'm so happy that they did it, and they embrace it. So don't take your kids to see this movie because they're going to see a lot of gore and stuff, and even the language too. I'm like, oh my god, they made us swear.
Is there a Hugh Jackman butt in it?
I can't remember. I don't think. I mean, ironically, I would remember that. So no, it's been in previous ones, but that's gotten a PG-13 rating. But this, I think, has a lot more to do with the violence and the language. It's cool because Wolverine is such a feral character in the comics, and a lot of his humor comes from being kind of prickly and vulgar. So to see them finally embrace it, even if it is in the last film, was really refreshing. It's not a perfect film. It runs a bit long. They try to shoehorn this weird random villain in there that you've never heard of and you don't care about. I'm like, you could have just gotten rid of this, and it would have saved us a bunch of time. Because clearly the real enemy and villain in this is just kind of age, which is something we all have to deal with. So in that sense, I feel like that makes it more universal. There's a ton of great Easter eggs for fans, but again, it might be a little tough to jump into this movie if you don't know anything about the Wolverine movies or the X-Men movies. You might actually be able to do it, but there are going to be points when you're going to be confused and the audience is going to lose their mind and you're just going to go, I don't understand why you guys are oohing and ahhing over this. That being said, I do think it's a good movie. It's kind of like a Western movie. It's weirdly about family, the sort of weird family that they put together, Professor X and this girl and Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, whose name is Logan. And this might be a mild spoiler for you because if you haven't been on the internet in the last year, apparently, so it's not a spoiler, but just in case, it's Hugh Jackman's last outing in this role, is what he said, and I'm going to caveat this with look, let's figure out what they actually mean by that, because this film again takes place 50 years in the future, so I'm sure there's the opportunity for him to appear in a previous one and be like, well, it was my last outing in this series, but
the prequel could
exactly.
come.
But I think if this is send off and if this is his last, what a way to go, because it was such a good movie. Forget superhero movie, it was just a good movie.
How many mohawks do you give it, Dana?
I'm going to give it 4.2.
All right. Very good. Very good rating. I want to see it. I mean, I can't imagine Wolverine without Hugh Jackman playing that part.
Exactly. And they keep talking about remakes and stuff, and I actually really just hope they leave it alone because it was just such a poetic ending, and you don't hear that in regards to comic book movies, in quotes.